Hi, Doug Wingate, licensed acupuncturist, here with another video about the 8 circuit model of consciousness and how it can be used within the realm of Chinese medicine to inform a practitioner's practice and hopefully lend some insight into imbalances that may be occurring in a person and possibly some thoughts on how to approach that. It's been a little while since I've made a video on this. I apologize about that. Several different projects going on, one of which includes working on this book right here. So that's kind of in the last editing processes right now, and hopefully will be available fairly soon. Also, working on getting set up for continuing education courses so that that material can be covered and practitioners can get some education credits for it. In the last video, we covered the second circuit, the emotional territorial circuit of consciousness. And so the next transition developmentally happens around the age of 7 or 8 when the child moves into what's called the neurosemantic circuit of consciousness. And at this age, the child makes a large transition in their type of thinking from more of a magical or mythical approach of thinking, where stories and fairy tales that are told are very real, and things that occur can, as far as they're concerned, happen very magically and not necessarily have a concrete causality to it. And so as the child transitions into this next phase, the frontal lobes of the brain become much more active. The neural connections in that area of the brain increase quite a bit, and so with that comes a lot of the functions of the frontal lobe of the brain, which include logic, reasoning, deductive logic, compartmentalization of ideas and experiences, and also the increased use of formal language. And so obviously the child is able to speak before this, but here reading, writing, and the mathematics, arithmetic, comes a lot more into play, utilizing that logical process of taking concepts out of their mind, applying it to paper, or taking the concepts on paper and internally processing it in order to extract information from it and work through logic problems like arithmetic or puzzles and things like that are all very much third circuit activities. And then later on, or even at that age, the hard sciences and philosophy and disciplines where a lot of rational thinking or problem solving comes into play. The concept of time here also becomes much more solid, and so the individual is able to conceptualize solid past, present, and future, and with that develops a better ability to plan in advance. This is what Korzybski referred to as the time-binding elements of the neurosemantic circuit. And so along with this comes the ability to place specific times and dates to events and then look back in history and say, okay, this happened at this time and date, and prior to this, this happened. After this, this happened. And so a very linear concept of time is formed. This also marks a time where generally right-handed dexterity comes more into play, and that plays into the writing component as well. And from here, that transition out of the mythical type of thinking to more of a linear, logical type of thinking allows the child or the individual to step out of experiences of their imagination or proxy experiences that they may have through stories, television, video games, and things like that, and see those things as not real events, as opposed to prior to the activation of this circuit, there was no real differentiation between the two. So those imaginary events or stories are processed the same physiologically as real life experiences the child goes through. So a scary movie or a scary story is processed in the brain and also elicits a response from the adrenal glands, very similarly, if not identically, to a real life scary event or a traumatic event, even. And so that marks a large transition conceptually as far as how the brain is processing things. As far as the increase in logic, looking at this from the realm of Chinese medicine, a lot of this falls into the realm of the spleen organ and its ability to think, memorize, compartmentalize, and then, of course, pathologically, overthinking certainly falls into the category of the spleen. And so, somebody who has an excessive third circuit can manifest symptoms very akin to a spleen excess, where overthinking and anxious thoughts and over worrying become issues. Physiologically speaking, when looking at correlates between the third circuit and the third chakra, the neuroendocrine organ that's associated with this is the pancreas, and of course Chinese medicine doesn't formally recognize, or traditionally didn't formally recognize, the pancreas as a separate organ, and rather general consensus is that also falls under the purview of the spleen organ, and so the more yin components that involve blood are generally considered to be the spleen organ itself, whereas more yang components or descriptions of spleen yang tend to fall more closely to the function of the pancreas in the body. And so the reason that the neuroendocrine gland associated with the third chakra is the pancreas, and certainly falls in line with a lot of the functions that are going on here with the neurosemantic circuit. So that is kind of what's going on there. So a lot of the treatment approaches will involve the spleen organ, or even the stomach organ, depending on stomach organ can be brought in if digestion of ideas or external events is not happening properly. So if there's a big influx of information and it's just not being able to be processed, not being able to be digested, then you may look to the stomach organ as well. This is often cases where information is taken in but not properly digested, and so rather it's regurgitated or spit back out, or person will talk about things without them really being fully integrated into the self. And so those are some of the treatment considerations that may be brought in. And that's kind of where the third circuit leaves us. That stays in place until early puberty, or around the time of puberty, and we will discuss that in the next video.